everybody, I'm Danny Grossman, sitting in for Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for joining us for ILTV's weekly program, One-on-One with Alan Dershowitz. We want to give you, our viewers, the chance to have your questions answered by Professor Dershowitz, one of America's greatest legal minds. He's a leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Hi, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, once again, we are delighted to have a very special guest in our studio. Jacob Elon is one of Israel's preeminent journalists. He has anchored the primetime news program on every major network, and currently he serves as the news anchor for Walla TV. On a personal note, you will certainly remember the last time he interviewed you at the Globe's business conference. Not only was it a riveting dialogue, but immediately afterwards, world-famous mentalist Lior Suchard revealed to the world the PIN number from your personal bank account. So, Jacob, if things
have it.
There you go. If things don't go well today,
I'm going to rush to the cash machine and take it all out. So please behave yourself.
So that's where all my money went. I was wondering, right? He made it disappear.
There you go. There you go. So let's get started. And again, it's a pleasure to have you here with us, Jacob.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
At a recent speech in West Virginia, President Trump created quite a stir, well, at least in Israel, saying Israel would have to pay a higher price in negotiations with the Palestinians in return for his recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Noy Dagan is a recent graduate of the IDC, the Herzliya Interdisciplinary Center, and sent a question for you, and let's hear from her.
Shalom, Professor Dershowitz. My name is Noy Dagan, and I currently live and work in Jerusalem. Like most Jerusalemites, I felt personally involved with the U.S. Embassy move to our city. Now, I wanted to ask you, Professor, do you think President Trump's recent statement that Israel will pay a higher price for Jerusalem embassy move is a tactic statement made to reconcile the Palestinians who've been pretty upset with the U.S. administration, or part of a greater strategy for getting a peace deal? And by the way, Professor, I just got back from New York and Boston, and people didn't care about Jerusalem there. They cared about a much more important conflict. Who do you think will win, the Yankees or the Red Sox?
Well, thank you very much. I think the Red Sox are on their way to a glorious, glorious season this year. I certainly hope so. On the issue of the serious issue of what the president meant, I think the president's a deal maker. And what he was really saying is, look, I gave something to Israel early on in the process, the recognition of Jerusalem. I don't think he gave anything. I think, look, Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel, and America was obligated to recognize that. But the point he was making was there's going to be back and forth and negotiation, and Israel's going to have to give some, and the Palestinians will have to give some. Prime Minister Netanyahu made the same statement. He said that both sides will have to make painful compromises. I think that's all the president really intended. Israel will have to make some painful compromises, particularly when it comes to settlement building. And we'll see what the plan is as it unfolds. But I hope it will be good for both sides and good for peace. And I hope it's a plan that all the Sunni Arab countries in the region will embrace, and that ultimately the Palestinians will feel they have no choice but to accept. You can't have a two-state solution without the Palestinians sitting down and negotiating. It's not going to be imposed from outside, either by the United States or by the United Nations or by any other entity. It has to be a result of a process of negotiation between Israel and the Palestinians. That's been the American position since the beginning of time, and I think that's a position that President Trump will embrace as well.
Jacob?
Yeah, well, President Trump said this before, so I don't know what to make of the timing. John Bolton, who was here, National Security Advisor, just said yesterday here in Jerusalem that there's no timetable. So I don't know what to make of the timing, but I'll tell you more than that. I don't see anything really happening in this direction. I see in Jerusalem, the right-wing Israeli government very confident that they are totally on the same page with the Trump administration on everything. The Palestinians are not even speaking with the Americans. There's no dialogue between the Palestinians and the Trump administration whatsoever. The Palestinians are in a totally non-starter position here. So you know, if Jerusalem is off the table, as the president said, I'm just wondering, you know, what's there? What's there? Evacuation of settlements? Unlikely. 67 borders? Even highly unlikely. I don't know, armed forces for the Palestinian state? I don't think so. A lot of money from the Saudis or somebody else to the Palestinians? Maybe, but it's not enough. So let's see what happens. You know who says this. Let's see what happens. I don't see anything happening anytime soon.
I think that's unduly pessimistic. First of all, Jerusalem is not off the table. President Trump has made it clear that it's certainly possible that the Palestinians could also have a capital in Jerusalem. What is off the table is the unfair refusal of the United States to recognize what every other country in the world has the right to do, that is, name its own capital. That's off the table. That should have been off the table since 1948. What is left on the table is Jerusalem having a Palestinian capital. What's left on the table are territorial swaps for the core settlements that are within the security border. That's very much on the table. There are many, many other things on the table. Look, the Palestinians claim they're not satisfied with the status quo. You can't change the status quo unless you sit down and negotiate. My mother's favorite Jewish joke was about, you know, Moshe, who was about to turn 80, and he prays to God every day to win the New York lottery before he turns 80. And when he turns 80, he doesn't win the lottery, and he turns to God and he says, Hashem, why didn't you let me win the lottery? And God responds, Moshe, help me out a little, buy a ticket. And of course, the Palestinians haven't bought a ticket. You can't get a state unless you buy a ticket. And a ticket means sitting down and negotiating and making painful compromises. Look, everybody knows that the end result of any negotiation was going to be Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It was going to be allowing some, at least, of the major settlement blocks to remain part of Israel, Ma'ale Adumim, Gilo, you know, etc., and that there'll be territorial swaps.
But the question is, what kind of Jerusalem? Which Jerusalem? I'm saying the question is, which Jerusalem? Everybody has their own Jerusalem. You know, do you see any Jerusalem surprise up the sleeve of the Trump administration for the Palestinians, like he implies?
I think so. I think the president's very anxious to get the Palestinians on board, and I think that in exchange for strategic benefits to Israel, the Palestinians will be given some symbolic benefits. And I think having a capital in Jerusalem, you know, precisely where and under what circumstances, is going to be subject to negotiation. But the end result will be a Palestinian capital in Jerusalem with a Palestinian state. Look, it'll be much like Israel. The real financial capital will remain Ramallah, but they will have a symbolic capital in Jerusalem. Look, the real financial capital of Israel is Tel Aviv. But historically,
you know, Jerusalem is all about religion. You know that. The question is whether on the religious sides, the Palestinian will be given something, and that will definitely create a lot of noise in Israel.
I don't think so. I think there'll be some, my prediction is there'll be some control over religious sites neither by Israel alone nor by the Palestinians alone. There'll be some resolution to make them available to everybody. I think the Saudis are going to be crucial there because they're allegedly the guardians of Muslim holy places in Jerusalem. And so I think negotiating with the Saudis will be as important as negotiating with the Palestinians about Jerusalem. Look, and the Hamas claims that moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem are so incredibly phony. Hamas doesn't believe that Israel has a right to have a capital in Tel Aviv. They think Tel Aviv is occupied territory. So the notion that there were these protests at the Gaza fence because of moving the capital from one illegally occupied area, namely Tel Aviv, to another illegally occupied area, namely Jerusalem, is just so much nonsense and an excuse for violence, which the Hamas had previously planned.
Okay, well, let's move on a little bit. This story broke almost at the same time that another issue dominated the news in the United States involving President Trump's former lawyer and campaign manager. Alan, you immediately reacted by saying that the bombshell admission by Michael Cohen that U.S. President Donald Trump directed him to pay hush money to two women in the days leading up to the election is not as deadly as is being portrayed. This came on a brutal afternoon that Trump also had, it also came out with a jury's finding about campaign chief Paul Manafort. So, Alan, can you walk us through this?
Sure. First of all, Cohen didn't, quote, admit that the president directed him to do it. He accused the president of directing him to do it. That's not an admission. That's an attempt to try to minimize his own crime. But second, let's assume it's true. Remember, under American law, a candidate is entitled to contribute $1 billion to his own campaign. If Trump had announced, I'm running, I'm worth $11 billion, I'm going to contribute $1 billion to my campaign, and $100 million of that is going to women who claim that I had sex with them, that would be perfectly legal as long as it was reported. So if the president made the contribution, it was completely legal, no matter what the purpose was. If he directed his lawyer to do it in his behalf, it was completely legal. So the claim by Cohen that he told him to do it is actually exculpatory, not inculpatory. The only crime would occur if Cohen himself made the contribution and it was in excess of the $5,200 maximum contribution. But Cohen says he did it at the direction of the president. That would make it a non-crime for anybody. And so, you know, the cable news networks are tolling the death knell for the Trump administration much too quickly. You need to understand when something's a crime and when it's just a political sin. And that's what I've been arguing repeatedly, the distinction between political sin, of which there are plenty by the Trump administration, and crimes, and I haven't seen evidence of crimes or impeachable offenses yet.
So that's the line you see in Trump's things to Fox News when he said, yeah, I paid, it was my own money. And this is how he tries to avoid this federal offense. By the way, as a journalist, I have this on the tip of my tongue. Did Donald Trump call you or ask for your advice?
No, of course not.
Oh, okay.
I am not Trump's lawyer. I voted against him. I'm going to vote for the Democrats in the midterms. I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm just a legal analyst. And I think my predictions have proved to be correct because I don't let politics influence my judgment about the law. I'd be making exactly the same argument if Hillary Clinton had been elected president and they were yelling, lock her up, and trying to investigate and impeach her for matters that were not crimes. So I'm not taking a partisan position here at all. I'm doing legal analysis, which I would do no matter who the president was.
You think Robert Mueller and possibly the Congress will, knock on Michael Cohen's door now and will try to convince him to make a deal?
Of course. Well, he's already made a deal, and his deal was he's getting 3 to 4 years in imprisonment for pleading guilty. And part of the deal was to try to inculpate the president. If he cooperates more, his sentence will be lower. If he cooperates less, his sentence will be higher. So there's already a deal in place that it's implicit rather than an explicit deal, but it has the same real impact.
Well, Yaakov, let me change gears again. You had something to ask Alan about the BBC.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard that the BBC issued an apology because you said some terrible things about James Corbyn.
Well, I told the truth about Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, sorry. Yeah.
The moderator said, basically, isn't America losing its spirit? And I said, don't lecture us in Great Britain about Donald Trump when you have Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn has called Tzipi Livni a war criminal. Jeremy Corbyn has supported Hamas and Hezbollah terrorism by visiting the graves of the terrorists who killed the Israeli athletes. He presides over a party which is filled with anti-Semitism. They've had to suspend many of their members over anti-Semitic statements. And so I told the truth. I said that Corbyn is an anti-Semite. I think he's the most dangerous anti-Semite in the world today because he may be the next prime minister of a great country. And my understanding is that Channel 4 News then issued an apology for allowing me to tell the truth on its station. If it invites me back, I will continue to tell the truth.
Yeah,
I will call
I think that according to British law, and you should know that obviously, you cannot call somebody anti-Semite on the media. Is that true?
I'm not bound by British law. I'm bound by American Constitution and by rules of morality. I will continue to call Corbyn an anti-Semite. If he wants to sue me, I would welcome such a lawsuit. It would be much like the lawsuit brought against the woman, the historian, Deborah Lipstadt. I would be proud to see Corbyn's anti-Semitism placed on trial before a British jury, before a British judge. And so I hereby challenge Corbyn to bring a lawsuit against me. I will defend myself on the ground that truth is a defense under British law.
Because I've heard truth is not truth. I don't know.
Truth is truth when it comes to accusing Corbyn of an anti-Semite, being an anti-Semite.
Well, before closing, and we'll give you one last thing, we have one final segment which we filmed last week with Gabrielle Winiger. Let's see her update and let's roll the film.
Now a short update from the sports world. A few months ago, Professor Dershowitz, you, together with a member of Knesset and former Israeli judo Olympic team member Yoel Razvozov, announced on our show that you would be undertaking legal action to sue for the right of Israeli national teams to compete in international competitions which had barred the Jewish state, and to compete displaying their Israeli national symbols. Recently, the International Judo Federation cancelled the Judo Grand Slam scheduled for October in Abu Dhabi. That has now been reinstated following a compromise that will allow Israeli sportsmen to compete. Let's go straight to Yoel with the following update.
Hi, Professor Dershowitz. It looks like our joint efforts have already begun to yield positive results. The message seems to have gotten through, even though our lawsuit against the exclusion of Israeli symbols in international sports events hadn't even been heard in court yet. The International Judo Federation had announced that in order to prevent political interference in sports, they are cancelling the two competitions that were scheduled to take place in Abu Dhabi and Tunisia. And I hope we can make this decision a precedent for all sports federations. Thank you.
Your great work in keeping the pressure on has already achieved some results and will continue to achieve results. The message to the international community must be that sports must remain and must be politics free. We don't want to have a situation where Israel is treated as a second class or even worse, as a no-class citizen in the international sports community. Not only sports, but all kinds of competitions, including chess. The International Olympic Committee has behaved disgracefully in this regard, starting in 1936, continuing after the massacre of the Israeli athletes in Munich. Other sports groups and federations have acted despicably toward Israel, and we have to keep the pressure on. We have to make sure that no sports or competition event takes place anywhere in the world that discriminates against Israel. Nobody would tolerate discrimination against black people, against gays or transgenders and lesbians. Nobody would accept discrimination against Muslims, and nobody should be able to accept discrimination against Jews or Israelis or any people who have any connection with the nation state of the Jewish people. So keep up your good work. Kol hakavod for what you've already accomplished. Count on me to stand behind you in everything you do. We and our children will finally see a world in which Israel can compete equally in every form of competition, and Israel, when it's allowed to compete equally, will shine. So continue your great work.
Let's stay with sports and politics. Public Affairs Director for Stand With Us, Gilad Kabilo, joins us now to talk about recent efforts to end discrimination against Israeli chess players. Gilad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Tell us about Liel Levitan and what you would like to ask Professor Dershowitz.
So the story of Liel Levitan is really the story of discrimination against Israelis in worldwide sports. Liel Levitan is a 7-year-old chess champion who recently won the European Schools Chess Championship, earning her a spot in Tunisia in the World Championship. However, Tunisia, as you know, doesn't allow entry to Israelis and has discriminated against Israelis in world sports before. Stand With Us launched a campaign to hold the World Chess Federation accountable for this discrimination and have them demand of Tunisia a commitment to allow Israelis to play. Within a matter of days, hundreds of letters were sent to the World Chess Federation, and they responded by demanding that accountability from Tunisia. 2 days later, the Tunisian Chess Federation capitulated and committed to allow Israelis to play. This is a story that is unprecedented in the accountability of these world sports organizations, not only in chess, and we're seeing it as a larger trend. And what we see from this is that the voices of the people matter, that civil action matters, and through civil action, we can create change against discrimination.
Professor Dershowitz, your response to that?
Well, first of all, Stand With Us is one of the great grassroots organizations in the world today. They have done so much good on college campuses and around the United States and in other parts of the world. I was not aware of the great work that you've been doing in terms of trying to bring equality to the world of chess. Again, Yasher Koach to the work you did. And it's only a beginning. Let's make this a commitment to make sure that no chess match ever occurs anywhere in the world from which Israel is excluded. And I want to congratulate the 7-year-old girl for her prowess in chess. I used to play chess when I was a kid, but I could never win any championships like that. So to have a 7-year-old represent the nation state of the Jewish people, and remember, the world has to know that in Israel, if the chess championship was won by a Druze or an Arab or a Christian or somebody else, they would be representing Israel. This is not a question of only Jews representing Israel in the chess championship. It's a question of any Israeli who's good enough to win the chess championship being able to represent Israel around the world. So I hope she wins, and I hope Israel continues to be able to play in every championship, and I hope Stand With Us continues to do the amazing work it does all over the world. I'm so proud to be identified with Stand With Us. They are such a great organization.
Thank you, Professor Dershowitz.
All right, well, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks, Professor Dershowitz. And, of course, I'd like to thank our special guest, Jacob Elon. And if you would like Professor Dershowitz to answer your questions, go to iltv.tv or our Facebook page and submit them. And we'll see you again next week.